Ukrainian officials say at least 34 people are dead, including 2 children, after Russia launched a missile attack on Sumy. This church's live stream on YouTube shows the congregation reacting as a large blast sounds outside, shaking the camera. You can see it shake there. You can see the smoke rising through the window. That's the explosion happening there. President Donald Trump is calling the attack terrible, suggesting Russia made a mistake. Now, European leaders are condemning the strikes and criticizing the US brokered agreement between Ukraine and Russia for a ceasefire. Foreign correspondent Tom Burridge joins me now for more on this. Tom, what is the latest on this recent attack by Russia and how is Ukraine reacting?
Yeah, James, we've just got new details from Ukraine's interior minister, and he's basically told us now that the 2 ballistic missiles fired by the Russians mid-morning yesterday, Palm Sunday, right into the city center of Sumy. So the city, the capital of the region, right up in the northeast of Ukraine, near the border with Russia. Those 2 missiles were fired just about 2 minutes apart. Now, ballistic missiles, as you know, James, are very, very hard to shoot down for Ukraine's air defenses. And crucially, we know from Ukrainian officials that the second Russian missile had a cluster munition warhead. And that effectively means, I've seen some of the remnants of these types of missiles in previous missile strikes earlier in the war. Basically, these missiles are packed full of massive chunks of metal, which are basically sprayed across a wide area. So even if the Russians thought they were targeting some kind of military target, a concentration of troops, which they claim today, it is sure that they would have known that they would have had a high collateral civilian death toll firing those types of missiles at that time of the day on a Sunday morning right into the city centre.
And Tom, Trump called the attack terrible yesterday. What do you make of that, and what does it say about the progress he's making to ending the war? I mean, is there any progress?
Well, as you know, James, very well. I mean, look, we've always thought this: ending the war, but Russia's invasion of Ukraine was always a tall order for the president, right? I mean, his claim that he would do it in 24 hours looked, way off, effectively, from the word go. Now, I think we're seeing, after weeks of efforts by the Trump administration, multiple visits by his envoy Steve Witkoff to Moscow. He was there on Friday, warm handshakes with Vladimir Putin. But despite all that, we're not seeing any indications from the Russians that they are willing to end the war. We've heard from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky now, and Western officials on briefings I've been on back this up, that Ukraine is willing to go for a full ceasefire and then negotiate other terms, like what security guarantees Ukraine would get in the future. But the Russians aren't willing to go there yet. I mean, for Western officials, they believe that for the Russians, the war continues. Vladimir Putin is still committed to his maximalist goals in this war, and that is compromising the independence of Ukraine, bringing Ukraine effectively back into Russia's sphere of influence. It's really the driving reason why Vladimir Putin launched this war more than 3 years ago. And at the moment, we're not seeing any progress at all. Quite the opposite. This attack in Sumy, this horrific attack yesterday in the middle of the morning, killing at least 34 people, is proof of exactly the opposite. That at the moment, despite all the Trump administration's efforts, there is no sign that we're moving towards anything that looks like a full ceasefire in Ukraine. James?
And Tom, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said time and time again that Russian President Vladimir Putin does not want to end the war. I mean, where do you think a negotiation goes from here? Because we've got both men basically saying the other one doesn't want to stop the war. I mean, what has to be the first step on the route to peace, do you think?
I think at the moment, James, like for the Russians, I think the bigger prize is normalization of relations with the US. And that seems to be, if you look at the comments coming out of the Kremlin at the moment, Dmitry Peskov, the spokesman for the Kremlin yesterday, effectively said that process to normalize relations with the US going ahead well. I think the critical question now is what leverage Donald Trump has and what leverage he's willing to exert to actually bring the Russians to a point where they're willing to make meaningful concessions. Because we've had the Ukrainians and the Russians both agree to halt strikes on energy infrastructure. But at this time of year, with the winter over, that's not much of a concession on the Russian side. I mean, if anything, it's a concession from the Ukrainians, because one thing they were able to do was send their drones into Russia to hit oil and gas depots in Russia and cause some kind of pain to the Russian economy and the Russian regime. So, I think the critical question now is, what is the next step from Donald Trump and his administration? What is he actually willing to do in terms of concrete steps next to actually pressure the Russians to make more meaningful concessions and actually move to a meaningful negotiation to truly end this war. James?
Foreign correspondent Tom Sufi Burridge, thank you.